What's up, guys? You are listening to the Charm City Sideline podcast. My name is Bradley. I'm here along with Zach and Dawson on Halloween Eve. Um, Q&A podcast tonight, Wednesday night. We're going to do a little different today than we used to. We're trying to shorten these episodes a little bit, not go over an hour every single time. So we're kind of just going to talk about three different topics with multiple different questions that we got from you guys, and sort of just have a discussion around there. You guys are free to comment any thoughts or other questions that you have. And you guys ready to get into it? Hey, how's your week been so far, guys? How you recovering from that Browns loss on Sunday?
Yeah,
Man, brutal
yeah,
loss, but we're feeling good. It's just, we're Ravens fans, man, so we know how to deal with stuff like this. And, Eric DeCosta's clearly awake, working the phones, and brought in a guy yesterday that I would say we're probably going to enjoy down the stretch. But, we've recovered. We've put it in the rearview mirror, and, we got to look forward now to another big game this week in Baltimore, man. It sounds crazy against the Broncos, but they are playing really good football right now, man. So the Ravens got to be ready for this team.
yeah. I love the mentality after a loss like that. Like everyone's so angry. They know they shouldn't have lost. I'm sure, like, if you've seen different tweets from different Ravens reporters, Zrebrick was tweeting that players stayed after and were catching footballs. I think it was all the DBs and stuff staying after. Roquan got asked today. He's like, "Yeah, the defense is going crazy, but um, make sure that we're keeping receipts." And like it said some like crazy quote, like he's pumped up, he's back to it. It takes, a loss like this to also smack a good team in the mouth and realize, hey, you're not as good as you think you are. You got to freaking go out there and beat NFL teams. So it's a big week, big bounce back week.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I'll say is the Ravens' losses are so bad that they're not even really moving down in power rankings. Everyone just knows that they just lost because they played terrible. Like the farthest I've seen them go is from 2 to 4 in any power ranking, and everyone knows that they just played terrible and lost. So hopefully they can continue to string some wins together. But we'll get into the first topic here, and it's going to be about Diontae Johnson. So the Ravens traded for Panthers and longtime former Steeler wide receiver Diontae Johnson and a 5th-round pick in exchange for a 6th-round pick. Sutton asked how Diontae Johnson makes the Ravens offense better, and Max also asked if you like the trade and why. Zach, we'll start with you on this one. Overall thoughts from the trade and just how are you feeling about what the possibility of Diontae Johnson could be for us?
Yeah, and just as we follow the Ravens a lot, right? We were expecting a defensive move probably because even though that side of it is so, half and half right now, it's got a lot of talent. But on the other side for offense, I think it's amazing that EDC was still making calls. The front office was still making calls, trying to find guys like this that are talented players that can instantly impact us and get them for like a bag of chips. Diontae Johnson and a 6th-round pick in exchange for our 5th. I think the total trade movement between those two spots, those two picks, was about 19 spots. That's just projection. But like by the end of the year, it could be completely different. It could be much higher, much closer. It's still one round. Like at the end of the day, we're talking about a range of close to 32. I mean, that's all it took to get Diontae Johnson. And I think that EDC also making these moves, the ones that are like super cheap, means that he can make another move here soon. And I think that's why a lot of us are fired up about it. But Sutton asks, how does Diontae make the Ravens offense better? I think with the reports, Josina Anderson had one today, that Bateman and Zay are staying the 1 and 2. That's not in the discussion. I think that happening means that Diontae is brought in as another guy to complement the receiving game and be an upgrade from Nelson Aguilar. Not to diss on Nelly. We love Nelly. Nelly's made big catches, big plays for us this year. But Diontae is a Pro Bowl freaking wide receiver, whether he's, that good or not. It was just that year. But Diontae is a great wide receiver. And his ability to create separation is just as good as someone like Rashad Bateman. And that means that your 3rd wide receiver now is to create that much more for Lamar and really open up the offense and make it better. The reason that the Ravens offense gets better from that is because you bring in a guy who is motivated, coming from Carolina. you go from what, bottom of the league to the top. It's kind of like what the Chiefs did with D-Hop. He was sitting there. He was getting used a little bit. Both of them were. They've had their moments this year, but they go from a bad team to a good team, and now are able to go on a Super Bowl run. I think it's just an amazing trade all around. And Diontae perfectly fits the Ravens offense just from how skilled he is as a player. And I think he's going to fit perfectly with Lamar.
I think it's a great trade too. Excuse me. I think it's a great trade, and the Ravens get this guy for essentially nothing. And I think they only move back like less than 20 spots in the draft and pick
Yeah.
up a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver who immediately comes in as your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Him and Bateman, obviously, you're going to fight for the spot. But I think now having 3 legitimate weapons at the wideout position is amazing. And no shade whatsoever to Nelson Aguilar, because he's been pretty solid when we need him. But now you have a legitimate third wide receiver, or I would say 3 wide receivers that teams have to fear for and like account for. Because like there's no longer like, it's these 2 guys and nothing. Now you have Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and Diontae Johnson, who's went for 1,200 yards just a handful of years ago in Pittsburgh. I think we all remember that as Ravens fans. And he's a very, very capable wide receiver of making big time plays. He's a contested catch guy. He's a big dude. I didn't realize how big he really is. He's a big receiver. And he does great things, man. So the Ravens bring this guy in, and it's only adding more fuel to the flame. And I think it's a great move. I hope it's not the last move. I would be very happy, even more happier than I already am, if this is just the first of another move potentially by Eric DeCosta. But either way, you're giving your franchise quarterback another weapon, another guy who actually has a lot of respect around the league and a guy who can make plays happen when they need him the most. So I think it's a great trade, essentially giving up nothing to get a guy like that. It'd be a little different if you actually gave up a little bit of value, but you didn't, and this doesn't affect you in any way of potentially making another move and hopefully for a defensive player. So I think he'll fit this offense great. He plays a game very similar to Rashad Bateman. He's a great route runner, separator amongst the NFL wide receiver class. And man, I love it. It's a great move. Bring this guy in, and hopefully down the stretch, he's making plays for this offense, just like all the other guys.
Yeah, for sure. And there's also a comment here about Diontae being able to be a returner with Hardy being on IR, which is very valuable. I feel like the Ravens don't really have a guy that they super trust a lot without Hardy in there, so that could help. What's up, Dawson? Thanks for being here.
I will say
Yeah.
too, John Harbaugh's already mentioned that about they kind of brought him in with eyes of him hopefully, going into a kick return type role. So we're definitely going to see Diontae Johnson potentially doing that, because losing Deontay Hardy kind of sucks, because you have Chris Collier back there returning kickoffs, and then you got Tylan Wallace returning punts, who lately has not been the greatest for the Ravens. So I will say that, you bring in a guy who has experience there and has done pretty well, I would say, in the past, given the opportunities that were presented to him. And hopefully he can help with that aspect, because the Ravens special teams has been lacking some plays this season, a little more so than past years. So hopefully, not only just for wide receiver wise, he can make plays in the special teams game too and help us win games.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of my take from this trade is you've seen a couple people in the media and also fans sort of criticize it, saying that the Ravens don't need a receiver and all that stuff. But we talked about it multiple times. When you have a chance to improve, you take it when you're a Super Bowl contender. And that's what this is. We've also talked about how sort of dangerous it would be if either Flowers or Bateman is injured long term. Now you sort of have insurance for that, where you'd still have Bateman and Johnson or Flowers and Johnson. So you're in a good spot there as well. And like you said, Zach, the Ravens, by the end of the season, it might be trading back 5 spots in the draft. It's for a receiver like this. And I really, there's really no downside at all, because you're paying him nothing. You didn't have to give up anything. So I like that there. Comment from Wrigley is
And
stoked on the move.
another real quick point too. I'll get right to this comment. I will say Diontae Johnson is only 28 years old, and he's in a contract year. So say he balls out for us down the stretch, dude, we can lock him up in free agency moving forward and have him for however many years we want. So it's kind of a win-win. And if you lose him, you pretty much more than likely will get very similar value in a compensatory pick back that you gave up to get him. So it's really a win-win, no-lose opportunity for the Ravens. You basically rent this guy for the next half of the season. Hopefully he does well, and you have your opportunity to lock him up long term. And if you lose him, you're probably getting very similar value to what you gave up. to get him right back. So I think it's a win-win opportunity for the Ravens, and it kind of gives him a chance to kind of get back in the AFC North and play rough football and hopefully get back with the Steelers too.
Yeah, for sure. And the whole comp pick talk about the Ravens could end up gaining a draft pick out of this trade. Wrigley really liked to trade. EDC is goaded. Let him cook. So we all agree with that. They're definitely a good trade. Moving on to the second topic of this Q&A, we had multiple questions. Chris, D-Love, Evan, all sort of talking about and asking about what the Ravens do from here before the trade deadline ends, I believe, on November 5th. Some questions about should they trade for more defense? Which position on defense should they trade for? All that sort of talk. Dawson, what are your thoughts overall with what the Ravens should be doing before November 5th?
I will say my opinion on this and my honest prediction for this has changed rapidly over the last 24 hours. Before we made a move to acquire Diontae Johnson, I was getting a little worried about who the Ravens could potentially go after because there's just unlike previous years, there's not really many big impact players, I feel like, on the trade market right now. In years prior, I feel like there's always a select portion of guys where teams are like, oh my God, you can go get him. He's a difference maker. Go get him. This year, I feel like it's a little different. There's not a lot of guys, especially in the positions where the Ravens could acquire and help this team. So I think trading for wide receiver is great. I love the trade, like we just mentioned. But obviously there's an elephant in the room that needs to be addressed with this defense in Baltimore. And I don't think Eric DeCosta and anyone with a logical reason to be a general manager of a team would make a move to just strengthen what is already a super strength on your team and not address what is just an absolute disaster, and I'll say it in the defense. So I think this is 100%. Um, I think 100% Eric DeCosta is cooking something up for a defensive acquisition. I can't tell you exactly what. I can tell you what I hope. I just don't think he addresses wide receiver without looking at the defense and bringing in help. So I think here you have to immediately look at the pass rush. We have a very significant lack of pass rush this season so far, and it's weird because you look at Kyle Van Noy and he has 7 sacks. Through the first few weeks. And right now, I think pass rush is absolutely awful in Baltimore, man. It's hard to look at it when it's ever been worse than right now. We are just not getting any pressure on the quarterbacks, and the secondary has been hit. But at the same time, if you have no pass rush, that's a direct impact on the secondary if you can't get to the quarterback. So I think Eric DeCosta has to 100% look at the market for pass rush. I would say defense as a whole, of course. But the only names I can really think of that could potentially come to Baltimore is I realistically don't think you're going to be able to get a guy in Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, even Micah Parsons. I don't think these teams want to move on from these stars, and I think that the Ravens don't want to give up what they would have to acquire one of these guys. So you immediately look at Zadarius Smith over in Cleveland, who the Ravens are rumored to be talking with Cleveland, potentially on moving Zadarius Smith over back to Baltimore. So I think they're in talks there with Cleveland. We'll see if that transpires into anything. But I think a guy like Zadarius Smith or potentially even Azeez Ojulari over in New York is a guy that could potentially be moved for, the right price. And I would probably prefer Azeez Ojulari in this case, to be honest with you, because he's a lot younger. He's producing very well right now in a pretty bad situation. Granted, the Giants D line is pretty good overall as a unit, so they obviously have help there. But I think when you look at cornerback in the secondary in Baltimore, obviously it's a very, very poor unit right now, but you have the personnel to be a good defense. You have the players in place right now to be a top unit in the NFL. It's just not clicking. There's something schematically going on with, communication or something that's not clicking, but I have the confidence that this team will get it going. It's not like we don't have cornerbacks and safeties right now. We have really good players in place already. I can't really say the same about the pass rushing unit. I can't really say a lot about Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owe, those guys, and I love them. They're good players. They're not getting the job done right now. And I think with this Super Bowl window that you're in right now, granted we're always going to be in one with Lamar and company. I just think the Ravens absolutely have to go out and pull the trigger and bring in a guy who immediately makes the impact and will day one start and be your best pass rusher. So I don't know who that's going to be. Like I said, I don't think we'll get a top tier guy, but I would love for that to happen. I just think a guy like Zadarius Smith, Azeez Ojulari, really a veteran on an expiring contract, a guy like Khalil Mack potentially, it's going to have to be a guy who is kind of on an expiring contract or a guy who the Ravens are confident in bringing in and extending long term. So we'll see how this shakes out, but I have all the confidence in the world that Eric DeCosta knows what we need. And I don't logically think he would trade for a wide receiver without addressing the biggest weakness on the team, and that's really the defensive unit as a whole. So whether that's bringing in a safety, a defensive line, because our defensive line is very injured right now. Hopefully, a pass rusher, potentially even a quarterback. Who knows? But I think Eric Costa is absolutely cooking something up, and I'm super excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I think the number one focus is anywhere on the defensive line for help. I think Matabike, it has all the potential. We know he does. We've paid him like he does. Owe, Kyle Van Noy, both good pass rushers, but it's not the next level guys that we need right now. And I'm not sure it starts with that for the defense. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go there because I think those two are capable. It's just they need more help. Last year, if you add in Clowney, they become one of the best in the league. I think number one in sacks last year. I'm pretty sure. You literally just have to add another person. I think a great point to make is what we were saying previously about the wide receiver group. If one of those, Bateman or Zay, goes down, and you have to have Nelson Aguilar as your two, and start playing these really young guys and hope that they can make big plays come playoff time, that is dangerous. And in the other side of it, pass rush, let's say Kyle Van Noy or Owe go down, we are in significant trouble. Like it's very real. And I think that someone like Za'Darius, who is being circled right now for like a day 3 pick, like and just wanting a good one, shoot, throw him freaking Carolinas, throw him one of ours, like late picks, and just see if something can happen. Za'Darius is familiar with the Ravens anyways. I think that's a good one. I think someone commented, I forgot who did, but someone said Jadeveon Clowney, see if the Panthers are still wanting to talk and move guys just to see if their fire sale continues. I think both pass rush. I'm not sure about anyone in the secondary that's available right now. No names have been floated out like pass rushers have, but if anyone's on the phone asking him, it's Eric DeCosta.
In the secondary, you got guys like Trey White on the Rams, who has definitely fallen off a little bit since being in Buffalo. There's no safeties that are like definitely being shopped. There's been some rumors about Budda Baker, all pro safety in Arizona, Trevon Moehrig safety in, I almost said Oakland, Las Vegas, and Andre Sisco in Jacksonville. I remember Moehrig and Sisco were both sort of Ravens guys that Ravens fans liked when they were coming to the draft, which isn't, it's insane how fast time goes by that they're already almost done with their rookie contracts. I remember talking about how much I wanted the Ravens to draft Andre Sisco in the second round, however long ago
Out of
that
Syracuse.
was. Yeah. I definitely agree, pass rush, but at the same time, anyone you can get on the defensive side will help and probably make a difference.
It's just hard to imagine like trading for a corner right now and logically finding a guy and getting someone who's better than Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, or Nate Wiggins. Like it's just hard to think about. Like who are you trading for? Like Pat Surtain? Like it's just not happening. You have the players in place. They just, the defensive unit has to figure it out. And once they do, man, it will be great. And same thing with the safeties. I know Eddie Jackson has a lot of backlash right now, but I'm not even including Eddie Jackson. You have Kyle Hamilton, and I know Marcus Williams. Unfortunately, that situation is really weird right now. But you have good safeties. Like you have the good players in place that you need. And for some reason, it's just not clicking right now, man. And I really don't know why, and it's concerning. But all we can do is hope that they figure it out. I saw this comment by Moltak real quick. I will point out he said a while ago, I know in previous weeks you said execution was a problem on defense, but I'm sorry, at some point we have to blame Zach Orr, especially with how much his defense has fallen off compared to last year. And I think that's a really good point because I was talking to, I believe, you guys the other day or somebody. And obviously, looking at the blueprint of the defense this year compared to last year, it's a night and day difference. Last year it was top 5. This year it's probably bottom 5. And that's unfortunate. But last year, how many guys on our defense had like the best season of their career? It was incredible. I mean, Geno Stone, Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, Justin Matabike, Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy. I mean, you can literally go across the board. Brandon Stevens. Like almost every player on the defense last year had the greatest season of their career. And it sucks because I'm not jumping the gun yet on Zach Orr, but it is sad to think about that when you look at the production by these guys this season, and we have quite a few of the same players. I know we had a lot of guys who left, a lot of departures that were, big names, but overall you still have like that core of players, and just none of them are really playing as well as they did last year. So it's like you kind of have to look at the defensive coordinator at this point and see like what is going wrong? Like what is going wrong on this defense and in this scheme right now, and the play calling and the communication? Like what is happening where Roquan, Justin Madubuike, and all these other guys are just not having as big of an impact as last year? Because last year, dude, this defense was just all over the place. I mean, these dudes were flying around making plays every game, every drive. It was incredible. So, I mean, I'm not jumping the gun on them yet, and I have confidence in Zach Orr, but I do think we're to the point now. There's no excuses. You have to look at the defensive coordinator. He's in control of this unit, and it's just nothing compared to last year. And I know it's his first year, but we're 8 games into the season, and this defense has not really looked good in any of the games. They have looked like a pretty below average bottom tier unit almost every game this year. And it's unfortunate because we're not used to this in Baltimore. We're used to having a top 5 unit every year. So now when you think about the Ravens as a bottom 10, bottom 5 unit, it's weird. We're not used to this and it sucks. So I think the Ravens got to do anything they can to bring in defensive help. And, I just anything at this point, honestly, they have to make a move because if you don't make a move and you just depend on Zach Orr figuring it out, rallying these troops and the defensive unit as a whole, just figuring it out and putting it back together, I think you're in for a long season. I don't know how fast this can turn around, but I think adding someone that can actually come in and immediately make an impact will immediately help this team. I mean, it will help this defense because right now there's just nothing going as far as pass rush, and it doesn't help when the secondary has to hold up for like 10 seconds. So I think the immediate move has to be going for a pass rusher, no matter who it is.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Pass rush, definitely the number one move you'd like EDC in the front office to make. And that leads us into the third topic of this episode, and it's sort of about the defense as a whole and the chance that they have to possibly become a better unit by the end of the season. We have some questions from Baby Seti, Ivan, and Brandon. Some questions here, just where how do you think the defense will be by the playoffs? Do you think the Ravens will move on from Zach Orr in the offseason? And then also, do you think we should let Orr continue as DC or have him demoted, not fired in parentheses? Probably, it would be a promotion of Dean Pease to the defensive coordinator spot. I've seen some people mention that they would bring in someone else. That just is never going to happen mid-season. You got to know the personnel, know the scheme, all that good stuff. To get into this topic, I would say that I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty confident that the Ravens defense will be better before the playoffs than it is right now. I mean, it can't get much worse giving up 29 points to a backup quarterback with really not many options at receiver. I feel like there's too many good players in the secondary for it to be this bad. Like you mentioned, guys, you got Marlon Humphrey, you got Nate Wiggins, Brandon Stevens, Marcus Williams, former All-Pro safety, Pro Bowler, Kyle Hamilton. Ardarius Washington's been playing well. Arthur Millette has come back recently. But at the same time, the number one issue is the pass rush. I mean, Jameis Winston had, I think, 20 plays on Sunday where he had over 2.5 seconds to get rid of the ball. For anyone that doesn't know, that's a lot. That's a lot of plays with a clean pocket. He was 24. Winston was 24 for 33 with 312 yards and 3 touchdowns in a clean pocket. And the 10 snaps that he was pressured, he was 3 for 8, 22 yards and 2 dropped picks. One of those plays was Hamilton's drop near the end of the game. Winston faced pressure there and threw an inaccurate ball. Should have been a game winner from Hamilton, but no one could really catch the ball on the defensive side on Sunday. In terms of, how can the defense improve? I feel like not many people are realizing this. 5 starters were missing on Sunday. Michael Pierce got injured during the game. Brett Urban got injured during the game. Actually, almost 6. Broderick Washington couldn't go. And then Marlon Humphrey didn't play. Nate Wiggins didn't play. Marcus Williams didn't play. I mean, that's 6 contributors on the defense side of the ball that were not playing.
To an already lacking unit.
Exactly. And Travis Jones has also been playing through an injury. I don't think he's 100%. I've seen some conversation about Zach Orr possibly disguising coverage too much. He's He's disguised coverage on 41% of the plays. Same exact amount as Mike McDonald did last year, 41% each. But, maybe a newer DC, younger guy, doesn't have as much experience. Being a play caller might be tough to do it as much. I think some people forget Mike McDonald was the DC at Michigan for a whole year, and the Ravens defense still struggled for the first half of the season when he came in. Sort of my last point here. Ed Reed left a note in the locker room. I don't know if you guys remember this, just a few weeks ago, and Marlon Humphrey talked about it. He said that communication is key. It's the most important thing in the secondary. That has not been the case at all. You saw the Cedric Tillman slant touchdown. There's no right end on the play. Everyone's running around. Owe finally gets over there, starts rushing the passer. Cedric Tillman's wide open for a slant, scores. Eddie Jackson misses a tackle, and just there you go. It's all those issues combined. Injuries, like I know you shouldn't use injuries as an excuse, but really there's like 6 contributors missing on Sunday.
When your top 2 corners are out, and your starting safety got benched and you're missing your defensive line, like it doesn't matter how good you are. Like it's gonna hurt. Like you're gonna show weakness and you're gonna show vulnerability no matter who you're playing. And you're playing a team, you were playing a team that had nothing to lose, that was going out there throwing it all on the line, trying to spoil, the midpoint of the season for a team that they hate. So in that game, I mean, it was obviously a trap game. The Ravens had everything to lose, and I shouldn't say everything to lose, but they had way more to lose than Cleveland did. So I just, obviously the trajectory of this defense right now is very scary to think about. And the future of Zach Orr in a lot of people's minds is uncertain, but I think quite literally his future is right here in Baltimore. I think he is absolutely going nowhere, whether we like it or not. I don't think the Ravens give up on him. I think he's our defensive coordinator all the way into next season, no matter what happens. I think the Ravens are a team and a franchise that wouldn't give up on him, and I think they are going to absolutely stick with him and ride with them. And like we said, it's not a personnel problem the Ravens have. It'd be different if we had a lot of bad players now and we were just hoping they could play better. We have a lot of really good players that are just playing poor football right now. And like Brad said, it's a lot of miscommunication, just a lack of knowledge, I guess you could say right now in the defense and the scheme. So that's all stuff that can get cleaned up. You can fix a lack of communication. You can't fix a lack of talent. So I think, I'm not saying this week it's going to happen, but I think the Ravens defense will eventually show some signs of life and kind of get back on track. I do not believe we will be a top 10, top 5 unit anytime soon, unfortunately. I just can't see it changing overnight, but I absolutely see this defense, returning to a decent overall good unit that doesn't give up 40 points a game, 300 yards to the air on a weekly basis to any quarterback. So I do have confidence. I think the defense will figure it out. I don't know how soon. Obviously, a big time or just a defensive acquisition before the deadline would help and kind of speed up that process. So I think the Ravens defense will figure it out. I don't know when and I don't know how, but I think, this whole uncertainty, regarding Zach Orr in his first year as defensive coordinator, I think it's full of baloney because I think he's saying here, I don't think the Ravens give up on him, but I think they're going to stick with their guy, as I feel like they rightfully should, because, he's really young. It's his first gig, and he was a great football player. He's got a great defensive mind. He's very knowledgeable, and I think he'll figure it out.
Yeah, I have a few things for just a possible rejuvenation for the Ravens. I mean, when you make a trade for a big player, like when we saw Roquan get traded here, and that was not necessarily a name that was thrown out in trade talks. He was, I think, at the beginning of that year, but it really quieted down. I think he even said that he grew in confidence about reaching an extension with them, and it never happened. And there's definitely players out there that are that caliber of impact for a team, and whether it's just a big name and they come in the room and everyone else is kind of like, oh shoot, I forgot I have a job here, and this guy's trying to replace me. There's different motivating factors. I just think that there's names out there, whether they're familiar or not. I think Clowney or Za'Darius or someone like Aziz, they make an instant impact on the building because of how they're going to just fit into the defense. If it's a pass rusher, that means less snaps for someone like Owe or Kyle Van Noy, and maybe their snaps are more impactful for whenever they're actually on the field, maybe splitting a few more snaps with whoever gets traded. Or in the secondary, if If Marcus comes back and let's say he's still not good and there's a secondary guy now in the mix, he's then motivated to play better. Like you have to. Someone's coming for your job. There's a few things that the Ravens can do, whether it's, starting with Zach Orr and making stuff, stupid basic. Maybe that's what I always thought was the problem with McDonald at the beginning of his defensive coordinating stuff, was he was like the most basic defenses. And then it turned into this like incredible all over the field, everyone's different looks and messing with offenses. It turns into something different. That might be what we're going through with Zach Orr, but we're still not going to hit that point, maybe even until like the bye. Like that's a long time away. And when you're changing week to week like this and playing these new offenses and high power offenses and rookie quarterbacks like this week, or a third stringer like last week, you're constantly changing and you're not able to fully put in the game plan like you want it. And I don't know. I'm waiting for that moment for Zach Orr. I'm not really confident. I think if you asked me about confidence in him, I'm not that guy to ask. But other than that, I think it can be rejuvenated. I'm confident it will be rejuvenated. I just don't know how.
And one last thing on Zach Orr, I did touch on this a little bit, but like there are blitzes he's calling, stunts he's calling that work perfectly. He calls them at the perfect moment. They work very well. The Hamilton dropped pick. Or Darius Washington comes blitzing through like the B gap, I think. And another DB came blitzing off the left side. Like 5, 6, 7 people blitzed. It leads to an interception. Like it's a great play call. That's a dropped interception. And like I think we've seen
that would
a
have
lot
won
of
the
those.
game.
Exactly.
That would have won the game if Kyle Hamilton caught the interception.
Exactly. Like you could almost compare that to like an offensive coordinator calling like a trick play that wins the game. And he called the perfect defensive play that led to a dropped interception 3-4 times on Sunday. So yeah.
That's unfortunate.
You guys have any final thoughts about anything we talked about or anything we didn't talk about?
Not really, to be honest with you. I'm just happy that we have a general manager is not scared. Obviously, we've seen his track record to make a trade. He is not scared to pull the trigger, and he's willing to give up the draft capital. He's not the most trigger happy person as far as that, but he gave up a second round pick before to get Roquan, which changed his defense significantly last year. And I would say overall, despite how they're playing right now, and he's not scared to do it, and he might do it again. But I absolutely think there's going to be a trade within the next few days. Leading up to the trade deadline, I think we should absolutely expect it as Ravens fans. Like I said, I can't, in a perfect world, I cannot see Eric DeCosta making a trade for a wide receiver, but not making a trade for somebody on defensive side of the ball. Like I said, it doesn't make any sense. How would you address that and not the biggest concern on your team? It just doesn't make any sense. And I hope you guys all agree on that. But I'm excited, man. I think we're going to get a good player. I think we're going to get somebody who makes a difference. And, post deadline, we're going to have a guy on the offensive side and a guy on the defensive side of the ball who make an impact and hopefully help this team and rally them down the stretch. And I'm super pumped, dude. I can't wait.
For sure. We'll see what happens before this deadline. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. It'll come down to the wire. Maybe we'll see. I feel like Ravens usually make trades not up to that final minute on that day. But
I will say I completely feel like it's going to be someone completely out of left field where no one expects it. Like I don't feel like we're going to trade for anyone we talked about, mentioned, read on news like a headline. I feel like it's going to be someone completely out of the blue that no one thought, and Eric DeCosta made it happen. I seriously believe that. I don't know why. I think we're going to trade for some random dude, a good player. Don't get me wrong, just somebody that no one expected, to potentially be on the move or even be fielding calls. I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be someone we have no idea and not expecting at all.
yeah, that always seems to be sort of the case with EDC in his time here since 2019. And it'll definitely be fun to see how it plays out. But that'll be all from us tonight. Not Q&A. Broncos preview probably Friday at some point. So we'll see you guys then. Everyone have a good Halloween tomorrow. Appreciate you guys for being here tonight. And be sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Happy Halloween.